Look, I'm not going to pretend I know anything about South Korean politics. I don't. I do know, broadly speaking, when for the first time in 45 years or so, maybe a little less, you declare martial law and a state of emergency because you don't like the opposition doing parliamentary tricks. You may have a democracy problem, and it'll be interesting to see where this goes. Here is some images of South Korean protesters using fire extinguishers against soldiers who were coming out of the parliamentary hall, I guess. What would you call that? Here they are.
과관수 계엄사령관인데요. 포고령 1호에 보면 정치적 결사 집회 시위 등 정치 활동 금지가 들어있지 않습니까?
네.
지금 체류탄을 발사한 거예요. 예.
연기가 지금 화면으로도 보이고 있는데요.
네.
어쨌든
I think that's going to be the first sort of like thing that we see. It's going to be unclear where it goes from there. I think
reports of troops being pushed back by protesters and stuff right now.
It's tough to put that toothpaste back into the tube, I guess, once folks have an extended period of democracy. I mean, this was South Korean democracy was pretty shaky during the at least middle part of the 20th century and probably prior to that. But then since 1980, it has gotten its footing. And so we will see. But it would not be, would not be the first time that this happens in South Korea, but certainly the first time in the past 45 years, and that's quite a while. But beyond that, I don't know. I don't know enough about South Korean politics to make any other points about it. American politics, though, I do have a pretty good sense of, and I also have a pretty good sense of MSNBC and sort of the absolute. I mean, let's be clear. You know, the postmortems, I think, just an opportunity for people to impose their priors on an outcome that, again, I don't think we have enough real data to fully understand. Although the one thing that is quite clear is just the sheer incompetence of the Democratic consultant class that was involved in the Harris campaign. But the other thing that is also equally clear is that money has bastardized our politics. We do not have the ability to limit, for the most part, how money plays in the general elections in this country because of the Supreme Court. The right-wingers on that court basically blew the barn doors open in terms of money. But within the context of primaries, these are private competitions amongst the political parties. So it is perfectly legal for the Democratic Party to impose some type of rules on participating in a Democratic primary. Here is MSNBC's Michael Steele, former Republican chair of the Republican Party, and Leah Doherty, former CEO of the Democratic National Convention Committee, talking about Bernie Sanders saying that the new DNC chair needs to get PAC money out of primaries. This is just primaries now. And this doesn't just include presidential elections, but in other words, the APAC can't dump $40 million into a primary to get rid of a Jamal Bowman or a Cori Bush. Or APAC couldn't dump $100 million or $200 million or $400 million into a presidential primary to get rid of some other candidate. And here's their argument. And remember, this is important now because there's we have a race for the DNC chair to come up. Here is these two. One's a Republican, and the other one is almost a Republican.
So you had Bernie Sanders tweeting on Monday, if the Democratic Party is to become a Democratic Party, the first job of a new DNC chair is to get the super PAC money out of Democratic primaries. AIPAC and other billionaire-funded super PACs cannot be allowed to select Democratic candidates. They typically don't. They're not going to put their money into a DNC chairman's race. Pause it.
Wait a second. Now, I can't tell. There's no way that Steele. I mean, Steele's just not a dumb guy. Yeah. I've met him before. He seems like a perfectly, reasonably intelligent person. So he's just lying here. First of all, Sanders was not talking about putting money into the DNC chair race. He was talking about primaries for Congress, for Senate, and presumably the president in the Democratic Party. The idea that it doesn't happen typically, we had two very major examples of AIPAC doing that in this cycle. In fact, they did it more than twice. They just only won twice. They've done it multiple times. And we're talking tens of millions of dollars in a reliably safe blue district. But of course, this happens in other places too. So he's just being maybe he's just sort of mailing it in today, or he's just purposefully lying.
Candidates, they typically don't. They're not going to put their money into a DNC chairman's race. So again, for me, as the former head of a party, as county chairman and a state chairman, that to me is short-sighted thinking about where the landscape is. One thing that has very little to do with the other. Super PACs and all those guys play in elections and campaigns. That's a different conversation than running for chairman and telling the people who are going to write checks, we don't want you writing checks.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. With all due respect to Senator Sanders, you might want to join the party if you want to have something.
Well, there is that.
Just on its face, that's a little problematic for me. Now, in terms of the money, look, that's not the DNC's issue. You're exactly right, Mr. Chairman, that that kind of money is in local races and state races, and the laws vary by state. Yep. So for the DNC to spend its time and energy on what state A says versus what state B says, versus what C candidate C says, just doesn't make any sense to me. There's so much work for the next chair to do. That would not be in the top 10 of things that I'd focus on.
11 or 12.
50.
Wow. They're all having a real weird, creepy ass laugh about this because what they also know is they're all lying. Now, is that Alicia Menendez? She's sitting there. Maybe she doesn't know. I mean, look, her experience in politics, maybe funding comes from other places. But the bottom line is that it is super easy for the DNC chair to say, hey, we're not going to allow PACs to come in and play within our primaries. And you don't even need to know what state's laws are here or there.
It's so complicated, Sam. How could we ever do anything about this?
You can't participate in any debates if super PACs support you. We're not going to allow you to participate in a debate, in a sponsored debate. If you take super PAC money, or even if there's outside expenditures on your behalf, we are going to dedicate 100% of our resources to the other candidate. What they are talking about is we don't want to alienate the big money early in the process. We want the billionaires to come in, support the primary candidates so that they're invested and they'll support them in the general election. But I'm sorry, that's BS. And it distorts the politicians we get. Now, fortunately, Michael Steele was the chair of the Republican National Party. He doesn't have any say in that. I mean, it's ironic that the former head of the Democratic Party is saying to Michael Steele,
Mr. Chair.
the chairman of the Republican National Committee, former, that Bernie Sanders doesn't have a right to opine on this because he's not a registered Democrat at the moment. I hope everybody catches the irony there.
Yeah.
That is pretty rich. No pun intended. Hey, folks, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and check out our daily show. We do it every day at 12 p.m. Eastern for about 2.5 hours. We even take phone calls. You should check that out.